What's going on, everyone? The Bad Habits, aka TBH here. Welcome to yet another movie review. Before we go any further, yes, my voice is off. I'm a little under the weather, but on a positive note, that gives me more incentive to keep this short and sweet for you. So, thank you for tuning in. There will be some spoilers, so if you haven't seen this movie, I don't know what the hell you're doing here. Go check it out and then come back for the review, okay? We're just waiting for you to leave. Okay, now we can begin. We're gonna read the plot synopsis from Wikipedia, per usual. This is gonna be an interesting video. Once again, thanks for tuning in and thanks for dealing with me. I know I sound like shit. This is actually the best I've felt in about 3 days. So, to be fair, I saw this movie on Thursday. It's Saturday now. I'm just now getting to the review. Let's see here. Set in a desert wasteland where warlords fight over the last remaining sources of water, food, weapons, and gasoline, Furiosa traces a young Furiosa's life from her kidnapping by the forces of warlord Dementus through her struggle to survive as a slave. You know what? Honestly, this is too long for me, so I'm going to shorten this shit up. This is a revenge story. Long story short, Furiosa gets her ass snatched by some marauders. She shouldn't have been there in the first place, honestly. She saw trouble and decided to just go for it. That's kind of what you get. Dare I say they weren't really bothering you? At least not yet. I don't know. Yeah, she gets her ass kidnapped, and straight up, that's when we get introduced to the man, the myth, the legend himself, Chris Hemsworth, my biggest MCU crush. Thank you for all 50 of you for tuning in for that video. Thanks for not being toxic, by the way. Once again, keep this in mind. I watched this while being horribly sick. Honestly, this movie was like a fever dream to me. It was so loud and bombastic and cinematic. I sometimes it was way too much for me. And I know it's a really personal thing because I feel like shit right now, but don't go in there tired or sick. So let's start right here. Chris Hemsworth as Dementus. Yeah, he steals a goddamn show, okay? But at one point, just like the Joker in The Dark Knight, there comes a time when Dementus's gang of marauders sort of take over another faction. I believe we're left with 20 people left over, but only 5 bikes. So, long story short, this man hosts tryouts. Did I say that creepy enough? It was supposed to be like Heath Ledger. Once again, I feel like shit. Early on, I found myself just eagerly waiting for him to pop up on screen. He's very charismatic. I was naturally on guard because he was sort of coming off as a bit sympathetic, sort of like a Dead Rising villain. Now, yeah, that's a very niche reference, but more times than not, they were just a regular person who snapped once the end of the world happened. I will say cinematography, camera work, it's very fluid. It's dope. I mean, I don't really think you expected less after this film right here. But it was a little spotty sometimes. I felt like the CGI was a little bit more noticeable in this one as opposed to Fury Road. It was mostly practical, but there is some CGI in Fury Road, so don't get it twisted. I just felt like in this one, the green screen backgrounds sometimes were noticeable. I wouldn't say that it's immersion breaking at all, but it lacks a little bit of the depth of the previous movie. Oh, also, since this is a prequel to Fury Road, a lot of characters do show up from that film. Of course, we get the iconic Immortan Joe, we get the organic mechanic, Scrotus, I believe, is one of the sons, and there's a few other side characters. Immortan Joe, he's really good in this film. I was actually kind of worried that they were going to make him a bit of a bitch, frankly. He's still the Immortan Joe that I remember, but he had a little bit of a softer touch. But it was only with young Furiosa. Outside of that, he was, yeah, the same one you'd expect. Can I be honest here? Fury Road started off just crazy and instantly. There was no time to take a breath with Fury Road. This movie is filled with action, but it took about 70 minutes for like the first action sequence to really pull me in. Also, I want to say, since this is a Mad Max saga, that is the subtitle after all. I could be wrong, but it looked like Mad Max himself might have made an appearance. There was someone watching from a cliff, and it looked a little bit like it could have been like an primitive version of the Interceptor. And besides that little blink and you miss it possible cameo, Tom Burke, y'all. This man plays a character named Praetorian Jack. He is sort of a Mad Max proxy. I mean, he's got the leather jacket, the fucking double barrel. I gotta say, without a doubt, Mad Max is in this film, one way or another. But even when looking at the literal face of death, this man is still cracking jokes, and he's just like, well, fuck it, I'm not dead yet. And then randomly throughout this film, we have a narrator for some reason. Every time the narrator showed up, it kind of took me out of it. Like, where the fuck were you for this thing? But you're here for this? Like, I don't know. Man. So overall, my biggest problem with this film is at about 2.5 hours, it certainly overstays its welcome. I'm sorry, I gotta be the one to say it. We could have trimmed this down to a neat 2 hours. And I don't want to be that guy who's only bringing up the Fury Road comparisons, but that movie was just 2 hours as well. Anything longer, I would have knocked some points off of Fury Road as well. Speaking of which, I want to clarify as well. Speaking of which, let me clarify something. I've been sucking Fury Road's dick. I wasn't in love with Fury Road at first. This version of Australia that we're living in this Mad Max world, it's goddamn disturbing, y'all. This movie is not for the faint of heart. At one point, you see a baby who has 2 lower bodies. We have maggots being carved out of rotten human corpses. There's a lot going on. Let's get to the parts that I take out. Notice how in this review I've yet to talk about Furiosa. Not the movie, but the character. Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy. You notice I haven't mentioned her really at all. Honestly, I feel a little misled here. Let me explain why. So I was sold on Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth. I signed up for that completely. But the child actor who plays young Furiosa, and I'm sorry in case somehow she ends up seeing this, I don't know why you would see this review, but you did a great job. But, frankly, I'm not here for you. I gotta be honest. This movie is a little misleading because Anya Taylor-Joy is the first name on the billboard, but she doesn't show up for about an hour into it, maybe even longer. And then, just when you expect Anya Taylor-Joy, who I will be referring to as ATJ from now on, due to some time-lapse footage, you don't. You get the child actor for even longer. It's like, what the... You don't want to transition into ATJ? So once we finally get to ATJ, she didn't really sell me on this, if I'm being honest with you. I'm a big fan and all, but I gotta say, this is one of the weaker films or performances from her that I've seen. And yes, I've seen Inhumans. Don't bother. I'm sick enough. I don't want, One day there will be a shit show review on that film. Luckily, this film isn't shit show worthy. And frankly, with this being, I believe, the start of a new trilogy, I could be wrong, but I'm a little worried because, she's not really giving me a lot to go on, but the biggest thing I'm worried about is George Miller, the director. He's directed every film in this franchise for 45 years? This man is about 80 years old. I can't help but to wonder, who's gonna step in for him when that time comes. And I don't know. I'm a little worried. I don't want to. I don't want to come off as a gatekeeper because I'm all about new interpretations. I mean, I love Robert Pattinson's The Batman. He's just some emo punk, but I'm okay with that. So when I say this film, I hope it will benefit from a second viewing. I gotta be honest, I'm in no rush to really see this again. My rating for Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Stream it. Okay? Wait for it to come on Max or wherever the fuck. On the other hand, I'd be okay with a Oscar nomination for Sir Hemsworth. I really think he killed it in this one. I really do, and that's not my bias showing. You shut it. Don't you dare bring up that video. Frankly, I'd have been okay if this film was called Dementis, a Mad Max saga. That works for me. Let's do that. But that's enough for me. Time will tell if Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, will be a classic or not. I hope you form your own opinion. Don't just listen to me. Give it a watch and, let me know how you feel in the comments. So, thank you very much. I've been The Bad Habits. Please subscribe, leave a like, a comment. It would mean the world to me. But with that being said, I've been The Bad Habits, aka TBH, y'all. And I'm signing out. Deuces.